someone wrote to us recently, and their words, they really settled with me. They said, I'm always the one reaching out, fixing things, apologizing first, and it feels like I'm the only one who actually wants this relationship to work.
That's, yeah. It's a quiet ache, isn't it? Something many of us have probably carried at some point.
Definitely.
That feeling of imbalance, where all the emotional labor, it just feels like it falls so heavily on one person.
And we often, well, I know I do, sometimes mistake it for just being kind, like wanting to be helpful, keep things smooth.
Exactly, maintaining harmony. But over time, that overgiving, it can subtly become like the only language we know how to speak in certain relationships.
Yeah. And if you've ever felt that listening right now, if you've ever asked yourself, is this generosity really free? Or is it maybe quietly tied to this hope of being accepted? Well, you are absolutely not alone. I know that feeling.
Indeed. I mean, have you ever found yourself saying yes when, like, every cell in your body was just whispering no?
Oh, absolutely. Or, smiling and nodding when you're actually feeling really hurt inside just to avoid tension, to keep the peace.
Or maybe felt that warmth from being kind, which is real, but underneath, there's that little flicker of resentment, or just feeling unseen.
Yes. So today we're going to gently explore this, how our sort of natural impulse towards kindness can, over time, become a kind of protective mask.
Right, and how that deep human desire, to be liked or simply to belong, how it can quietly, almost invisibly, shape a life where we end up silencing ourselves.
We'll be walking through two very human stories today. They come from an article by Helen Mudeba featuring Claire and Mark.
And their experiences, they really help us understand this powerful, compassionate framework. It's called the pathway to sovereignty.
It sounds quite grand, but it's not about judgment, is it?
Not at all. It's more like a lens, a way to understand how we instinctively respond to emotional triggers. And it guides us through those really challenging moments, hopefully towards deeper honesty, clearer boundaries, and, ultimately a more authentic sense of freedom.
So we'll hear about 6 emotional levels that people often navigate on this journey.
And the framework, it really illustrates how even ruptures, those moments we fear, the cracks in the facade, they can actually become this doorway, a profound doorway to release and even growth.
Okay, so just so we're clear on the terms, the full model is the pathway to sovereignty.
Correct. And the movement through the emotional states, we call that the staircase of sovereignty.
Got it. And we'll talk about 6 emotional levels, not steps.
Yes, levels.
Yeah.
Because it emphasizes that it's more fluid, not some rigid climb, it's holistic. So, yeah, after this, we'll probably just say the framework or this journey to keep it simple.
Okay, good. I find it so insightful, actually, how this framework shows we can meet pain not by, pushing it away, but with this deep, gentle awareness.
Exactly. And how we can rise, but not by rushing it.
Right.
Allowing the emotional process to just unfold naturally.
Yeah. And Claire and Mark, their journeys through these levels, I think they're going to feel incredibly familiar to a lot of people listening.
I think so, too. So let's settle into this idea first, the mask of kindness. It often starts so innocently, doesn't it? You offer genuine thoughtfulness, maybe a helping hand, and someone says, oh, you're so kind or you're so generous. And that praise, that validation, it feels good.
Of course. It feels safe, like you're seen, maybe even loved for it.
Right. That initial positive reinforcement is really powerful.
Yeah.
So it makes sense, doesn't it, that something inside us wants to replicate that feeling.
Totally. But like you said, that genuine generosity, it can shift so subtly. It can start being guided more by a quiet fear.
Yes. The fear of not being liked anymore, or not being seen as safe or agreeable if you stop being that way.
And that fear leads to certain behaviors, right? Almost reflexive ones.
Exactly. Like maybe making yourself smaller in a room, or saying yes when you really mean no, or even offering help before anyone's asked. Just trying to anticipate needs, be indispensable.
And externally, people often still react positively, right? They admire how much you do.
They do. But then internally,
Yeah.
the weight of it starts to settle in.
Yeah. That moment of reckoning, where the kindness itself starts to feel heavy.
It's not that you've stopped caring, but there's this quiet confusion. You're not quite sure anymore where this offering is really coming from. Is it love? Or is it fear?
And that's precisely where we meet Claire and Mark in these stories.
Oh, so Claire. Initially, she embodies what the article calls the invisible performer.
Okay.
Always dependable. The one everyone counts on for, well, pretty much anything. Her sense of worth was really tangled up in being
I
needed.
can picture that, like volunteering at her kid's school, juggling work, family, being the emotional support for friends.
Exactly. Even when she was completely stretched thin herself, always cheerful on the outside.
And then Mark.
Mark is described as the cool chameleon. Easygoing, agreeable, especially in dating. He kept things light, didn't make demands, never asked for more than what was offered because, that felt safe.
Right. So both of them on the surface seen as kind, agreeable, easy to be around.
Until something quietly broke for each of them.
Let's start with Claire. Her story really hits home about how that performance of kindness can kind of turn on you.
It really does.
Yeah.
She was apparently in the school office, just folding pamphlets, feeling utterly exhausted from a week of juggling everything. And then she overhears her daughter talking to a friend just outside the door. And her daughter says, "My mom does everything for everyone. I don't want to end up like her."
Oof. Wow.
Yeah. A quiet cut, as the article puts it, landed deep.
Yeah.
She paused, apparently, her breath caught, but she tried to just shake it off, dismiss it.
But it stayed with her, I bet.
It did. The seed was planted. Then, just days later, she's helping a friend organize a birthday thing. And that same friend just confronts her quite directly, says something like, "You're not actually doing this out of love. You do all this so people will like you. It's manipulative."
Wow. That's direct.
Incredibly direct. And Claire just froze, face burning, heart sinking. Everything she thought was kindness was suddenly cast in doubt. Not just by the friend, but by her own inner voice asking, is it true?
And that confrontation, that's what kicks off her journey through the staircase to sovereignty.
Exactly. She lands right in level 1, survival.
Okay, so what does that look like for her?
She's completely frozen.
Yeah.
Body tightens up. Her mind is just replaying those 2 moments over and over. Her daughter's words, her friend's accusation. She starts avoiding eye contact, hesitates to reply to messages, just withdraws, feels exposed, confused.
And that core question circling in her head.
If I'm not kind, then who am I? It's a threat to her whole identity.
So the insight at survival is that overwhelm. That freezing, reacting, trying to find safety, even if it means just retreating.
Precisely. Then, from survival, she shifts into stability.
Okay, stability. What happens there?
She starts looking for someone or something to blame. First, it's her friend. How dare she say that? Then her daughter. How could she be so ungrateful? And then, inevitably, herself. Maybe she had overstepped. Maybe she was foolish.
Ah, the blame game. So familiar.
So familiar. The inner noise just gets louder and louder. And she clings to the blame because, weirdly, it feels more powerful than the raw despair underneath.
Right. It gives you something to hold on to.
Yeah. But the shift point for her, as it often is, was just sheer exhaustion. The pain of trying to assign blame, figure it all out, it just became heavier than the silence itself.
So the stability insight is recognizing that blame, outward or inward, is this exhausting attempt to regain control that stops real processing.
Exactly.
Ah.
Next up, Claire enters self-awareness. But it's a bit tricky, this level.
How?
Well, she starts smiling tightly again. Agrees to help out at another event, even though inside she's screaming no. Her kindness isn't genuine anymore. It's become really calculated, performative. She feels like she needs to prove she's kind now more than ever.
Oh, interesting. So awareness doesn't automatically mean change. You can be aware and still perform the pattern, maybe even harder.
Precisely. The shift for her came when she actually forgot a task she'd promised to do, just a small slip-up. But that moment, failing the performance, it allowed her to really see the huge gap between how she felt and how she was acting.
The cost of the performance became too high, that disconnect.
Yes, and that painful gap led her to level 4, integrity.
Okay, integrity.
One night,
Yeah.
late, she picks up her journal, and she just writes. No filter, just pours out the raw emotion. And something breaks open as she writes the words, "I am tired of being everything for everyone." That release, it catches her totally off guard. But in that moment, she takes her first real breath of honesty. She's not just aware of the pattern anymore, she's actively questioning it. What if I stop proving I'm good?
So integrity isn't always a conscious choice, but more like the truth just bubbling up, too real to ignore.
That's a great way to put it. It's where the inside and outside start to align, even if it feels messy or raw.
Okay, so from that raw honesty,
She moves to wholeness, level 5.
wholeness, what changes here?
She starts saying no. But not with apologies or justifications, just with clarity and a quiet sense of peace.
Wow.
She stays home one afternoon, just for herself. And she notices how quiet and peaceful the house feels, without any guilt. She lights a candle that evening, just for her. There's this profound sense of relief. Her body softens. The pressure fades.
She's acting from presence now, not from that old pattern of seeking validation.
Exactly. And the insight here at wholeness is about that peace. It comes from allowing others to have their own views of you without needing to control or appease them. Resting in your own truth, even if it's misunderstood.
That sounds like real freedom brewing.
It is, which leads her to the final level, freedom, level 6.
And what does freedom look like for Claire?
She sees her friend, the one who confronted her at a cafe, and she smiles. But it's not from obligation, it's from a genuine place of peace within herself. She doesn't need to prove anything.
So the kindness returns.
Yes, but it's different. It's no longer currency, it's just a choice, freely given, arising from a clear, steady heart, not from fear.
Wow. That's quite a journey.
It really is. And the insight of freedom is that true kindness, it doesn't need an audience or an agenda. It just is. It flows from self-acceptance.
Okay, let's turn to Mark now. His turning point felt maybe a bit more subtle, but just as impactful, right?
Absolutely. The cool chameleon. After months keeping things light and casual in dating, he finally opened up to someone he felt a real connection with.
It wasn't like a huge dramatic confession.
No, the article describes it as a soft, vulnerable moment. Just honestly sharing that he wanted more consistency, maybe something real.
Okay.
And then silence. He didn't hear back. Hours turned into days. He checked the message, saw it was marked read. No reply. Ghosted.
Ugh, that's brutal.
It is. And at first, Mark tried to rationalize it. They're busy. It's fine. But inside, something cracked.
It wasn't just the ghosting itself.
No, it was what had touched deep inside him. That belief that he had to be easygoing, low maintenance, to be worthy of affection. And by asking for more, he felt he'd crossed a line, become too much.
So he starts replaying everything, questioning himself.
Constantly. Was he too needy? Did he say it wrong? Should he have just kept quiet? And this launches him into his own emotional spiral, his own staircase journey.
Starting, like Claire, at survival.
Exactly. Level 1, he immediately shuts down, feels this deep shame, tells himself he doesn't care, but he's obsessively checking his phone, caught in that reactive loop.
And his mind looping on.
I should have known better. Solidifying that belief that opening up was the mistake. It's raw fear, reactive behavior, trying to shrink back into safety.
Okay, so survival for him is that shutdown, the retreat, the self-blame to manage the overwhelm.
Yes. Then, from survival, Mark moves into stability. Level 2.
How does that look for him? Still the cool chameleon.
On the outside, yes. He jokes with friends about it, shrugs off the ghosting like it's nothing. But privately, his mind is frantically trying to regain control.
Blame.
Yep. First, he blames the person who ghosted him. Then, just as quickly, he shifts it back to himself. He was never enough anyway. He clings to the blame, again, because it feels more powerful than the despair.
Until the exhaustion hits.
Until the exhaustion hits. The pretense just stops working. It doesn't soothe him anymore. It just tires him out. That's the shift point again.
So, stability for Mark, same insight. That cycle of blame, external or internal, offers false power, but ultimately leads to exhaustion.
Exactly. Then comes self-awareness, level 3.
What happens here for Mark?
He goes back on the dating apps, tries to flirt, laughs about his own story of being ghosted, but it feels hollow. The performance isn't working.
Right, the gap is widening.
It is. And the real shift came when he apparently snapped at a friend who just innocently commented on how relaxed he always seemed.
Ah, that friction.
That friction, that outburst, it forced him to really see the huge gap between his internal reality and the external performance.
So, again, self-awareness isn't just knowing the pattern. It's when the dissonance becomes unbearable, maybe spills out.
Yes. And that unbearable dissonance, it propels him towards integrity, level 4.
Okay. What does integrity look like for Mark?
He finally tells a friend what really happened, how much it hurt. He stops performing the cool guy act. His voice apparently trembled, but it held steady.
And he heard himself clearly.
For the first time, really. It wasn't this conscious decision, I must be brave now. It was just the truth inside felt impossible to deny any longer. It had to come out.
That raw, unfiltered breaking open again. Honesty without agenda.
Exactly. And from that integrity, Mark steps into wholeness, level 5.
Wholeness for Mark.
He takes a long walk, apparently leaves his phone behind, starts noticing the trees, the sounds around him, really connects with nature.
Getting present.
Yes. And he starts thinking about connection differently, not as something to be chased or earned through performance, but as something sacred, something to be honored. He even writes a letter he knows he'll never send, just to process his feelings, give them form, release them. And like Claire, there's this immense relief. His body softens. He starts acting from presence, not chasing validation.
So the wholeness insight for him is valuing his own needs, his own presence, writing that letter for himself, not for her, acting from internal security.
Beautifully put. And finally, Mark reaches freedom. Level 6.
How does that show up?
He gets a message from someone new on a dating app. And this time, he replies clearly, directly names what he wants in a relationship, what he's looking for.
Wow. No more cool community.
No more. And he's willing to live with it if his honesty is seen as too much. Because he knows he's not too much. He's just not for everyone, and that's okay.
So his kindness, his openness, it's offered without the hook, without needing a specific outcome.
Exactly. It's love without the mask. It's showing up with truth. The profound relief of knowing your worth is inherent, not dependent on approval, just letting your true self be.
It's really powerful seeing both their journeys laid out like that and reminding ourselves, like you said, these levels, they're not linear.
Not at all. We move back and forth. We might revisit survival many times. What really matters isn't some idea of perfect progress up the staircase. It's just presence.
Yeah.
Meeting yourself gently wherever you are in that moment.
Yeah. Meeting yourself where you are.
So maybe, as you're listening, just allow yourself a moment for each of these reflection questions. There's no rush at all. It's just a gentle invitation to pause and connect with what feels true for you right now.
Okay. So if you find yourself in a moment that feels like survival, maybe ask, what fear is gripping me right now?
And if it feels more like stability, what story am I clinging to for safety?
At self-awareness, where am I hiding my truth?
When you feel that pull toward integrity, what wants to be said that I usually hold back?
In a moment of wholeness, can I be misunderstood and still feel okay?
And if you're sensing freedom, perhaps ask, what would it feel like to be kind with no audience?
Just let those questions sit with you for a moment. Allow the silence to do its work. You know, the masks we wear, like we've explored today with Claire and Hark, they really did keep us safe once.
They were coping mechanisms, ways we learned to navigate the world, maybe feel some sense of belonging when we didn't know another way.
But when those masks start to crack, when they feel heavy, ill-fitting, it's not failure.
No, not at all. In fact, it's often the profound beginning of freedom. It's like an invitation, isn't it? To a deeper, more authentic way of being.
And it's so important to say, you are not broken for wanting to be liked.
Yeah.
That's just deeply human, that desire for connection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But maybe real belonging, that true connection we crave, maybe it starts with truth, with daring to set boundaries.
Yeah. And with kindness that flows from genuine presence, not from a performance designed to get approval.
And just a general reminder, this framework, the pathway to sovereignty, it's a really powerful tool for reflection, for self-understanding.
But it's not therapy.
Exactly. It's not a replacement for professional therapy or mental health support. If exploring these emotions, hearing these stories has stirred strong feelings for you, please reach out for support. You don't have to face it alone.
Absolutely. Take your time with this journey. Let the truth unfold at its own pace. Be really gentle with yourself through it all.
And maybe, as you leave this deep dive today, just consider this thought. What are you truly longing for, deep down, beneath all the ways you try so hard to be good?
That's a powerful question to sit with. If you'd like to explore this more, we've put some resources in the show notes.
Yeah, there's a grounding song that can be helpful for those moments you feel yourself plummeting down to that survival level.
We've also linked a free PDF download of the Pathway to Sovereignty model itself, so you can see the levels visually.
And there's a reflective journal mentioned in Helen Wadiba's work. It's called Your Path to Becoming Untriggered. It's available on Amazon if you want to dig deeper with prompts.
Great. All those links are in the show notes for you.